From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. If you read the Colorado Sun, you might be familiar with a comic strip that revolves around an unlikely friendship. This series, called What Did I Miss?, follows conversations between Aussie, who's a young black man, and Myra, an older white woman who awoke from a long coma. Together, they struggle to understand modern-day politics and culture. Aussie and Myra talk about issues like artificial intelligence, disinformation on social media, and more recently, the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. What Did I Miss? Is written by Denver resident R. Allen Brooks. He also writes graphic novels and teaches graphic novel writing at Regis University. And this weekend, he's a featured guest at Fort Collins Comic-Con. Allen, welcome to In the NoCo.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your characters, Aussie and Myra, have some pretty pointed discussions about life and politics. How did you decide those characters would be a way to unpack current events?
You know, it's an interesting thing. When the Colorado Sun started, they asked me if I could do a comic. And I thought, well, I have maybe one page a week to deal with current issues. So that means basically one or two characters can have a conversation. And if the characters are sort of demographically the same, they'll say, like, if it's two black characters, it sort of becomes a black comic or a black opinion. Or if it's two female characters, just the same. So by making them sort of demographically contrasted, it allows for different perspectives and I think a richer connection to the humanity that they both share.
Yeah, it's an unusual concept. I'm wondering what was the point early on when you kind of felt like you were onto something with this?
So, initially the character Myra, the premise was that she had been in a coma for 30 years. Because I tried to think of why would they be having these conversations? I sort of drifted away from that premise in the last few years because now they just have a friendship that allows them to have these conversations. And I should mention, by the way, that Corey Redford does the art for that comic. But when I meet people out in the wild and don't know who I am, and then I'll say, oh, yeah, right then. And then seeing this really positive and engaged reaction, excitement, that's surreal and beautiful because it means that something that came from my heart has connected with them on a significant level.
One of the recent strips that has stuck with me is the conversation about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Myra hopes it will reopen the debate on gun control, and then it ends with Aussie just glumly saying, I wish politicians protected us as much as they protect guns. What do you hope a comic strip like this adds to the conversation?
That's a good question. I think the key thing for me is I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers. So I think the best I can do is present each issue from perhaps a different perspective and raise intelligent questions. Because I think there's so many issues that many people are much more qualified than me to work on solutions to. But my contribution is looking at it from different perspectives and raising thoughtful questions that maybe help pave the way towards that better solution.
I want to step back to your background because you've been drawing comic books from a very early age. What got you interested in reading them and then wanting to draw your own?
Well, it's a pretty interesting path. So my dad is a journalist. He was deputy managing editor at the money section of USA Today for about 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And when I was 5, he wanted to encourage a love of reading. So he introduced me to comic books. And he got me into The Flash. That was the first comic that I read.
Nice.
And so I was drawing pretty continuously for all of those years. And I think what appealed to me about comics is it wasn't cool to be smart back then, and it wasn't cool to draw. And comics had both of those elements, words I didn't know and drawings. But I stopped drawing when I was about 15 because I got waylaid by hip hop when I was doing battle rap and stuff like that. Girls responded to hip hop more than they responded to comics back then. So I actually did not start seriously drawing again until 2020. And during that pandemic years when I decided I just need to get back on this so that I can make sure that some of these things get finished.
It's interesting that battle rap that involves words as well. So it is smart words, just in a different form.
Oh. Yeah, that's another thing, right? Because in actually battle rap, the construction of the punchlines works very much like dad jokes.
Mm.
The only difference is because it's all puns. The only difference is that you say it with attitude and it rhymes, and the people are like, ooh. But if you said the same line, just
Mm.
to somebody just out in the world, they will roll their eyes.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny.
You've talked about in your younger years how being intelligent and being an artist who's Black could put you in danger where you grew up. I'm wondering how that shaped you as you started to embrace your artistic self.
The danger is being sort of a child of civil rights. Our parents were alive during the civil rights struggle. In their reality, when they grew up, anything that made a young Black person stand out, particularly in the South where I grew up,
Mm.
could have gotten them lynched or murdered. And so, born in the 70s, really growing up in the 80s and 90s, I stood out all the time and not intentionally, but I stood out in a way that was alarming to them
Mm.
on perhaps a subconscious level, and not just them, the greater community of people who were responsible for raising and protecting me. The fact that I stood out by using a big word or being creative and weird in their minds, I think just set off alarms in their heads. And
Sure.
the effect it had for me is that I had to choose to either be suppressed by their alarms or to push past it. And eventually I chose the latter because even when I tried to be suppressed, it just didn't work for me.
Hmm.
And, so it's been a long journey to kind of be comfortably myself in the world. And I'm really happy that I've made it here.
And so do you do your own illustrating?
Yeah, I would say maybe half and half. Like I actually prefer to work with other artists, but
Mm-hmm.
comics, they're hard. Like if you think about a page with 8 panels on it, those are 8 distinct pieces of art per page. So it's just very labor intensive. So comic artists burn out a lot. Like even at the top level, you'll be reading Batman and then wonder why the art suddenly changed. It's because the other person burned out.
Right. Well, you have a piece on display at the Denver Art Museum. I'm wondering, what does it feel like to have your work displayed there?
It feels surreal. When I was growing up, comic books were not really broadly accepted by anyone. So my teachers used to openly
Mm.
mock me for reading comics,
Wow.
particularly art teachers. And so the idea that comics have gotten me into a museum and made me into a professor is just like, I wish I could go back and tell 10-year-old Alan that, you know.
Mm. I'm wondering if is Colorado a welcoming and inclusive place for people when it comes to fandom and general nerdiness?
I would say so. Yeah. It's just good for my artistic soul. Like Colorado's
Mm.
so laid back and open and embracing. Uh, I love it. I love it. Like
Yeah.
Colorado has allowed me to thrive as an artist in ways that I think I perhaps would not have been able to in other places.
R. Alan Brooks writes graphic novels and the What Did I Miss comic, and he appears this weekend at Fort Collins Comic Con. Alan, thanks so much for your time. This has been great.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You can check out a couple of illustrations from Alan Brooks at our website, KUNC.org. That's it for us today on In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.